We were working on time travel. That's it. That's all I remember. Everything prior to the event is gone. Erased. I don't even remember my name. I don't even remember the whole project, only that it was a secret, and the events of the last day. And I don't even know if it's a real memory anymore. The earliest I can recall is walking into the lab in the morning. I recall the equipment, I recall doing finishing touches on it, tweaking dials and adjusting measurements. I recall the rats we tested it on, 2 standard white ones, 1 male and 1 female. We set the machine to transport them to 1 minute into the future. The clock read noon when they disappeared and 12:01 when they reappeared back in the transportation chamber. After thorough examination, we concluded that the rats were perfectly fine. The machine had worked. So we decided to send them an hour into the future. 12:30, disappear. 1:30, reappear. Perfectly fine. And we kept doing it like that. We would adjust the time by a few minutes or so, and each time it would work. After about 5 hours, we finally decided to bring in our human volunteers, government officials who had signed up a few weeks prior to the project's completion. The first volunteer didn't make it. A minute after we sent her, she came back sputtering incoherent nonsense, and then she died. Just dropped dead. No pulse, no identifiable reason. The second volunteer came back, only he had changed quite a lot. When we first sent him in, he was quite reasonably elated at the fact that he was one of the first people to time travel. When he came back, he was erratic and aggressive, which was just about when the metaphorical shit hit the fan. The once joyful and intelligent volunteer was now scrambling around the lab on all fours, sweaty and disheveled, screaming profanities and smashing things. Even after our best attempts to subdue him, he had got a hold of a fire extinguisher and tossed it right into the machine's control panel. Sparks flew from the panel, and the last thing I remember from that day was a jolt of energy through the lab and then darkness. I found myself in a void, only it wasn't empty. As I floated in the infinite black abyss, I kept noticing things. At first they were beautiful. Nebulas, hundreds of yards across, speckled with bursts of different shapes of purple and blue gases. Stars and star systems, huge, vast expanses I could see all of, despite being so far away. Thousands of suns, pumping out new elements every second. I could feel their intense, scorching heat, but I somehow went unaffected by it. New planets of all colors. Imagine some kid's collection of marbles, each planet a different, unique marble, thousands, millions of them. I felt oddly comforted as I witnessed these marvels of the universe. My first thought was that I was in outer space, but I could breathe. I wasn't freezing. I was missing every symptom that one might experience in the vacuum of space. As I drifted on, the things got less benevolent and more terrible. The first feeling of dread set in when I ended up in a completely empty blackness. No planets, no stars, no gas clouds, just black. I didn't know how long I had been floating through the abyss at this point. It felt like forever, but it could have just been 1 minute or 1 year. Then I noticed myself aging. I looked down at my hands, now wrinkled and veiny like that of an elder. I touched my face, also now wrinkled. I could feel my hair thinning and my body withering away, and yet I felt fine, physically anyway. My mental state was deteriorating quickly. This is when I forgot my entire life. I forgot my name, I forgot my childhood, my family, my friends. I don't remember anything. I don't know who I am anymore. I decided to start doing something to preserve the memory I had left, which was just that day. I keep repeating the story to myself over and over again, hoping that maybe I wouldn't lose the one clue to finding myself again. The blackness slowly evaporated into another object-populated cluster, which was still beautiful, but off. The planet had teeth, and legs, and eyes, thousands of them, and they weren't in set orbit anymore. They were moving freely, hunting things. The stars, although nothing was physically different, were boring into my very soul, watching me, The nebulas now radiated malevolence, as did everything else. Eldritch monstrosities surrounded me, and I cannot recall having ever felt so utterly frightened in my entire existence. My entire body convulsed in fright. I was shaking uncontrollably and struggling to breathe. Then I'm pretty sure I lost consciousness. I woke up in the lab, only it wasn't my lab. It wasn't the one that I knew. I peeled myself up from the floor and adjusted my glasses to look around the room. It was the same layout as my lab, but mirrored. The machine was still broken, but instead of being on the left side of the room, it was on the right. Everything was backwards. No one else was in the room. None of the other scientists I worked with were there anymore. I was alone. Although I was alone, I felt another feeling of impending doom. Something was here with me, and it wasn't good. I glanced over at the clock, now on the other side of the room, which read 5:01. I was only gone 1 minute, but I could have sworn it was 100 years. I watched myself grow old. I forgot my identity. I looked at my reflection. It was the same as I'd always remembered, almost as if the hundreds of years in the void didn't even happen. I have no idea where that shockwave sent me, but I know it's not my home.